Welcome, everyone. Good day from the Canaries where I'm based at the moment. It's great to see you all connected. We have Juan Gallardo, we have Anna Alonso, Liselott Piper, and Alfonso. Also connected, Alonso Escriva de Romani Arsuaga, connected with us. So thank you all very much for joining this session. My name is Cristina Blaj. I'm the CEO and founder of Open Revenue Consulting, which is effectively a strategic tech consulting firm that's focused on increasing profit margins and asset value for hotels. And this time last year, we're actually celebrating our Asset Growth Summit in London. We're all together exploring how, together with asset owners and operators, the role of asset management and profit management and this attempt to shift the industry's focus from what we call REVPAR to the actual bottom line. So I'm really, really pleased to bring together again a few very sharp minds here in hospitality and help us consolidate on those efforts to get a bit of an up-to-date view, an up-to-date picture of the current state of play, and also talk about specific strategies and practices that help us enhance that profitability of generated revenue and help us drive that organizational efficiency. So welcome to all of you. How are you all today? You can hear me all right, yeah?
Yeah. Yes, all good.
Excellent, excellent.
Super excited, Cristina.
Wonderful. So just the proper introduction then to make. So Alonso Escriva de Romani Arsuaga, he is the Chief Strategy Officer of Minor Hotels Europe and America. We then have Liselott Piper Bond. She is the Performance Manager at Pandox. And then we also gathered with Juan Gallardo, who manages he's the Hotel Director for Hotel Intelligence at Hotstats. And we have Anna Alonso, who's the Sales Engineer for Shiji. It's a really good panel to start talking a little bit about what we have planned for today. We've got a big agenda, so thank you all very much for being here. What we're going to start with is open up a little bit this topic and start with this panel conversation to set the scene as to why it's important to tackle this revenue to profit conversion and how actually we can get it done. So we'll have there the opportunity to bring Alonso and Liselott to give us really clear examples. And then we'll move over to Juan Gallardo, who will walk us through the actual trends analysis, what we see on the top line from a revenue perspective, where our profit margins sit, and how do we deal with costs across the various regions by asset type as well. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how that performance develops. And then we'll discover in a bit more granularity how we can really grasp those pillars to drive hotel profitability and focus on some of the main cost centers in a hotel. And that's where we're going to delve in the actual methodologies that enable us to get to that profit margin, and particularly how we can increase that organization effectiveness. And finally, and last but not least, we will be talking about how technology is a key driver from an operational efficiency standpoint and helps us maximize those results in the guest experience. What I would say is any sort of questions that pop to your minds, please type them in the chat because it would be great to deal with them towards the end of the session, just so we can flow through and make sure that we are keeping to the time. But towards the end, we'll definitely make some time to talk through this. So let's set a little bit the scene and why we're here today, effectively, right? Because we can see that our industry has been focusing on REVPAR for most of the time, I would say, for a very long time. And this has actually created a big disconnect between the revenue piece, the revenue generation piece, and effectively what we have in our account and the profit margin that we're actually able to drive. And we've sort of seen that, importance of profit management pretty much be overlooked. And that is what effectively helps us maintain this long-term sustainability. So when we actually convert revenue to profit, we see a large volume of financial waste and resource waste which is obviously harder and harder to bear and is no longer acceptable. So is how can we really shift the mindset in the industry and, have them to focus on the specific areas that enable us to drive this conversion? Because overall, I would say from a revenue perspective, we know really well demand, revenue behavior, and we understand its dynamic. But the industry seems to know very little about resource and cost behavior management and how critical that is to effectively increase the margin. So this is what will give us the chance to sort of like dive deeper a little bit into this and have Alonso and Liselott come to the front to tell us a little bit about how we do it. And I remember in our recent talks, we were discussing quite a bit about this perception on asset management and how it revolves around the role of the, effectively the general manager being able to steer things and has that operational role attached to it, but also that there's the disconnect and very in many occasions between the investors community and rather the capex that we have and the net operating income that we can actually get for the money that we invest. And we see billions of euros or dollars deployed on various occasions without a very clear plan on asset management. And I think that's a big challenge, especially with interest rates are now starting to go down and transaction markets starting to pick up again. Do we really feel that asset management is getting the right attention and is enabling that conversion for revenue to the bottom line? So I'd probably like to really give course to Liselott. Liselott is actually representing one of the most active asset owners in Europe, Pandox, and she's been in the space for more than a decade. So sort of like managing expectation and this dialogue between the owners and the operators. And so she's a subject matter expert in this area and would love to hear from her. What does she do to help hotels increase this, this flow through between revenue and the bottom line effectively? So Liselott, over to you.
Thank you. Well, we have a very systematic approach to trying to foresee our activity levels on a daily basis and also at the hotels per profit center. So to really be on top of what is going on each day, to resource plan and also to purchase plan and measuring the pace month to date and also month end towards the goals that we set on different items. So that's all where it sort of starts and ends, that we have clear goals and that we also try to foresee the activity levels for each of the different departments every day, actually, to be really on point with things.
That's really that's extremely important, right? And it creates a really nice segue into that role of monitoring what's going on. But perhaps also tell us a bit more around what do you use to be able to drive this performance, and what are those leading indicators that sort of tells you, okay, where do you need to drive specific attention on specific matters, and how do you engage on a daily basis with a team to drive those results?
I have a lot in my presentation a little bit later, but what we do every day, of course, we do have a tool to help us with this, and we take it down on an HOD level, I would say, to raise their awareness, to keep them accountable of the operational targets that we set. So it's a very intense collaboration between the full team, the GM. It's not just a HQ thing, it's not just a GM, a task, but it's the full operations, I would say. And with this platform that we use in Pandox, we really are transparent with our information sharing, so everyone knows the data. There's no silos really between departments or divisions, but everyone has access to whatever they need to be actionable every day. And we also set goals, operational goals for each month, and connected to these forecasts or activity predictions that I mentioned earlier, we really keep a focus on what they need to reach as HOD or division responsibles. And we give them also mandate to stay in control and to take actions if they see that things going sideways. And I think this with raising the awareness around the data and around the performance, not just, you know, explaining what has happened when there's just actualized data or reports month end. You can't do anything about it, but we try to look more forward and see if things are not going as planned, we still have some time to do it, to control the outcome, and enabling also all HODs to do this. So I see that that is a great force for a result achievement.
Wow, that sounds like a very complex process.
It's
Thank you very
interesting,
much for,
yes.
for giving us visibility. It sounds very complex
Yeah.
indeed. Alonso, now obviously you're very passionate about this area of converting revenue to profit. What does it mean to you at Minor Hotels, and what would you say are some of the key factors that ultimately influence your ability to do so at Minor Hotels?
Thank you very much, Cristina. You know, I think I will measure my words because you know that we operate some hotels that are owned by Pandox. So I think that, you know, I hope I don't say anything silly, right, in the conversation. Now, in our case, efficiency has always been part of our strategic plan. It's been one of the key initiatives that we follow very, very closely. And you know, it's very different factors that affect conversion, right? But one of the first things is to really understand the business, and we cannot deny that we have a business that has its complexity, because we cannot stock the inventory, right? A room that is not sold is a room that is lost, right? So it's not only a matter of you know, searching for ADR increases, right? If I take, for instance, our hotels in Europe, right, and we pull up ADR by a 3%, right? If occupancy is going down by a 5% in exchange, that would mean that we will be losing money in our case, right? So it's important to reach, let's say, a balance in that sense, and that balance has to be done at hotel level. It's not the same to manage the cost base for a hotel in Germany, where we have the flexibility of outsourcing the housekeeping, which is very common. That flexibility has nothing to do with a luxurious hotel where you need to provide a service and maybe an experience with many outlets, right? Where managing cost is much more tough. But you know, during the pandemic, we did make like a big exercise in understanding what is the break-even point in terms of, for instance, opening or closing a hotel, right? And that's something that you need to have very well measured in your portfolio, right? And but I think that finally, you know, there's one thing that is very important, because we are all, let's say, obsessed with margins and obtaining a certain gross operating margin. But in the end, you know, it's a matter of increasing that gross operating profit, right? And at times it's at the expense of, let's say, accepting some business that has not the same level of margin, but at the same time is profitable for the group. So that's something that we need to bear in mind when taking decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really important. And I think it's it kind of leads us to talk about some of the main challenges that we sort of see in this area for you to be able to continue these efforts. What would you say are the main challenges that hotels have today in being able to drive that revenue to profit conversion?
In the countries where we operate, right? Because you know that we have a very intensive footprint in Europe and the Latin Americas. So we see, for instance, in Europe, two different realities. We have the south of Europe, where ADR and demand has pushed up very strongly. So that has allowed us to obtain even larger margins than we had prior to the pandemic, right? Now, in Northern Europe, we are facing extra challenges because there what we are seeing is that staff costs are increasing even more than Southern Europe. And unfortunately, demand is not following as strongly as Southern Europe. In addition, you know that for some specific markets, we do see certain changes in legislations. So for instance, in the city tax in Amsterdam, which has increased, and that finally, you know, we are transferring that cost to the customer, but that's not a benefit for us. So those are, let's say, the challenges on the cost side that unfortunately make us rethink continuously and see how we go through.
So yeah, absolutely. Cost is a big challenge. I guess also the labor side of things is not making it very easy either to be able to make sure that we effectively staffed at the right levels to be able to drive the right results and the right guest experience. Are you having challenges in the labor side of things as well? Do you see that happening? Which region would you say is most affected?
In terms of, you mean in terms of, yeah, sorry,
getting the right staffing, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the right staffing is absolutely key, and in that sense, you know, we do work with sizing and with shifting tools. That's something that has become a priority in our case, and also with tools that maybe help you to challenge the way that you've been operating so far, right? So legislation, for instance, regarding the housekeeping department may trigger a decision of internalizing a service that was formerly outsourced, right? Because it has become at a certain point more profitable for the group. So it's key to have that data and that analysis being done on a regular basis in order to take the right decisions, because things are changing fast, let's say, in the labor market. So we need to be extremely prepared in that sense.
Wonderful. Right, I think we talked a little bit about some of those leading indicators. Would you want to give us any view, Alonso, on the type of leading indicators that you sort of tend to use? It's a little bit like we've heard from Liselott. There's quite they're really significant at the end of the day in how we manage the daily operation. Is there any particular indicators that you care about quite a bit in that respect?
Absolutely. You know, I think that you know we need to keep evolving the way that we read the business. So in our case, for instance, you know, and I know that we don't want to talk about revenue, right? But in the end, you know, revenue is the start of the P&L.
Yeah, big time.
So we definitely work on maximizing that top line. In our case, for instance, so in the rooms division, obviously we benchmark versus the market and our peers to understand what we are doing, how well we're doing. We did have until now, for instance, what we call autopilot, which basically is an automatic update of our prices at least 3 times a day. And now we are bringing that further and heading into dynamic pricing, which would mean that on, let's say, on an hourly basis, prices are changed if demand, let's say, justifies that we need to change our pricing strategy. And that's something that obviously will give us lots of time to market to maximize the room revenue. But for instance, now beyond room revenue, now we are having a look at closely on capture rate for breakfast. For some reason, in some markets, we've seen some of those capture ratios being lower than in the past. So we are testing, you know, the price strategy for breakfast to see if there is opportunities on making, for instance, that more flexible or having a different approach on pricing for breakfast. That's with respect to the top line, right? In terms of payroll, sizing and shifting tools obviously are key. And in that sense, we are finding ways also of translating the outsourced labor into full-time employees metrics, right? Because in the end, it's the only way of knowing exactly what's the workforce that is being used in order to manage the business, right? And we have many other metrics, right? So, for instance, on the purchasing side, obviously the let's say how much of our purchasing is done through our selected suppliers, because that's also something that we are pushing a lot our hotels to achieve, because in the end, that is providing us also a control of the cost. We have extra tools, for instance, on the purchasing side, that we purchase through Cooperama, which is our purchasing platform. And there we are having, let's say, a marketplace that is even giving you alternative to products that may have become expensive for a certain period. So that's, let's say, giving options also to the hotels to be able to choose more convenient purchasing products, right? And that's, let's say, the metrics. But in the end, it's also a matter of having the right profiles and having on board the people that really know how to use the tool and that are pushed to use the tool, right? This year, for instance, in our variable component, we have a specific metric on conversion. So we have pushed the general managers to achieve healthy conversion in at least 10 out of the 12 months of the year. So that's something that, it's also an additional metric that we want to follow and that we want to put, let's say, on the GM's variable, let's say, compensation.
Network's incentives are always a good driver, aren't they, for really
It's the
being
only
able to
words, Cristina. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those really important points there, Alonso. Liselott, if we come back to you, and I think you told us a little bit about technology, but how is that technology effectively connected in your ecosystem there at Pandox, and what is the type of data that enables you that visibility and that hands-on control to know effectively, okay, what you're expecting from that demand, and how do you need to align that activity on a daily basis in each hotel to make sure you're really driving that conversion?
Yeah, and this platform PMI tool that we use is really good in that sense that we integrate with most of our source systems that we use at the different hotels. Pandox has many brands, and so there are many different PMS, POS, and TKS systems out there, revenue management systems, and all sorts of good tools. But it's all the idea is that we all should connect into this joint platform. So all the data gathers there, and it all starts with the information that we receive from them. We try not to get anything, or as little as possible, to be a manual task, because we don't want to spend time on these things. With the technology, the APIs, and the different transfer methods that are available today, we see that the more open we are to share data, the better for the hotels. So that's one of the key points, I think. And this productivity management tool can then crunch all this historic data that we've gathered. Pandox have been using this platform since 2014 for certain of the modules. So obviously there's a lot of data there, but the tool crunches up to 5 years of data, also considering these bad periods, shall we call the COVID period that, and take that away, but then crunches it into the future and see, what is a reasonable pattern. And also always when using the algorithms that's embedded in this tool, that it always recalculates and picks up the latest trends, also using the on the books figures, of course. So yeah, it's the magic happens in the background, and then we assess the suggestions that the tool makes, and we, as I will let you in on in the presentation, we have managerial rights, so we can go into any suggestion and override it if we see that we have a better idea on what is going to happen, but most of the time that the tool is actually better than the human expertise, but there's a collaboration there. So in this live dynamic forecasting, the foundation comes from the tool, and then we can go in and tweak it if we see we need to.
So I heard you talk about forecasting there, which we will talk about in quite a bit of detail. Well, thank you for giving us a bit of a pointer there. So I completely understand. Technology obviously becomes really fundamental in bringing all these pieces of the puzzle together to give you the view as to what you need to manage and what are those leading indicators and who is responsible for getting it done. Are there any particular examples that perhaps you want to share, Alonso, on things that you've seen happening across your hotels, or just in general across the organization, that might be worth talking about?
Yeah, well, for instance, in our case, one thing that has proven to be very successful is the way that we manage energy, right? So in our case, you know that obviously the cost of energy is very simple: price times consumption. And here we are addressing the two of those. So on the consumption side, that is pretty easy, and that's having the tools that allow you to aggregate and have let's say the control of the efficiency in terms of consumption of energy. And on the pricing side, we did move to a model where we purchase in advance and hedge the price of energy. That in 2023 that was extremely successful, because in the case of Spain, which is one of the largest markets where we operate, we were paying prices that were hedged prior to the war in Russia-Ukraine, right? So it was half the price of the market. And now, already we have, more than 2/3 of the price for 2025 already hedged. So that's something, that's in our case, for instance, a very successful way of managing one of the biggest, let's say, cost lines in our P&L. Yeah, beyond obviously what we've already been discussing about payroll, which is nowadays, let's say, the biggest focus for most of the hoteliers.
Hold on. I couldn't agree more. Thank you for those great points, those great examples, Alonso. I think we've opened a little bit, or we've generated that interest, and hopefully we've got a bit of a taste as to what's coming. So we'll go into quite a bit of granularity in terms of how we can manage a lot of these major cost centers that we have across the business. So with that, I want to thank you so much for this initial panel. We will stay with us because we will have, of course, a Q&A at the end. And plus, we'll see in more detail, because Liselott has lots to talk to us about how Pandox does it. So thank you so much, Alonso. Thank you so much, Liselott. And actually, next, we will be looking at very specific trends in terms of how our performance is actually happening at the moment. And if we talk about the importance of these trends, and particularly the benchmarking, and we think back maybe 20 years ago when revenue management was, what is revenue management? Why is that relevant? No one really believed it was necessary back in the days. But then the benchmarking came about, and then that allowed hotels to compare their hotel's performance against the market index to know if they're really doing well. Are they doing well? Do they really do it so well? And that's really where the opportunity came into play, to make those decisions, see how they can improve. But similarly, today, when we talk about profit, we have the same opportunity. And thanks to Hotstats, we will see how we are actually managing those profit margins. And we'll get Juan to share his screen. Let's see if that works all right at your end. And you can take control over the presentation, Juan, because we're really, really keen to learn from you. how we stand across the regions.
Thank you, Cristina. Can you see my screen? Am I sharing it properly?
I can see a screen. I can see that's my screen. Let me just stop sharing, and perhaps that will just get you to share again. That might be easier.
Yes.
Can you see mine?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, good afternoon and pleasure to be here. Thank you, Cristina, for organizing this. So it's really important to get some context on how things are moving, right? For me, it's very easy to take almost any data point and show things are looking really good if we compare to 2019 or before. But if we are looking at year-to-date picture versus last year, the market, like we see the market has mostly slowed down, right? And I'll show you some of these examples. And as you already mentioned, I'm going to present an overview of the global performance in Europe. And then I'm going to focus on Italy as a sample of a important market in Europe to dig deeper in details, right? Just a quick background of where all the numbers come from and how much data we now collect, right? Back in 2019, we were sitting at around 3,500 hotels. And as you can see, the increase is significant. So this really enables us to produce really high quality reports. And we cover the full P&L, as you will see in my data slides, right? Full P&L all the way down to GOP with more than 500 indicators. I'm not going to bore you with a full sales pitch here, but these are the 4 types of reports we produce, and I just want to highlight the latest benchmarking tool we have, which is Profit Finder, which is really cool because it identifies all the areas of opportunity and it quantifies in euro, like how much you are leaving on the table in each of them. And it also allows you to set up targets and track the progress. So we have said this many times before, it's so important to have access to up-to-date information. This is the only way you can identify the areas of opportunity to increase revenue, reduce costs, and at the end of the day, improve the profitability. Historically, as we have been mentioning earlier, right? Historically, our industry was good at focusing on revenue, but less good at looking at what makes us profitable. As Alonso mentioned, like revenue is always important, it's always the base, right? But our focus as hoteliers should really be about how we can control and understand costs, the cost structure, as well as the revenue drivers, right? To at the end enable best performance. So a global perspective first on the 4 main regions, the US, Europe, APAC, and Middle East. So if we look at Q1 24 versus 23, if we zoom in from a macro level to see how things are going, we see Europe behind APAC in Q1, APAC coming from a small base last year, and Middle East continues to grow as every year we see replacement of events that happened the previous year and repeat great performance in both revenue and profitability. The real concern here is the US, as you can see, with a slowdown in revenue and even more worrying in profit with increase of expenses. Here in Europe, we are used to this for the last few years, high energy costs, as we have been discussing, labor costs, supply. So European hotels are much ready for a slowdown in revenue. If we have a look at Q2 now, APAC is falling, Middle East is performing really well, Europe and the US picking up. Specifically, especially good, the conversion here of European hotels with, as you can see, with a profit increase higher than revenue increase. And Q3, this is only until August, so we are covering here July and August only. And the most important factor is the decline in profit globally, right? Except for Europe, which had a really good summer, as I will highlight in a few points in the coming slides. If we look now at year-to-date profit margins by segment versus last year, although the luxury segment is performing really well, there has been a lot of development in mid-scale and economy. And as you can see in this slide, they have this mid-scale and economy has seen an increase of profitability higher than the luxury segment. So now looking at profit margin by hotel type, we see it didn't really translate, right? If mid-scale and economy segment has seen the highest performance change versus last year, you would expect that the select service would have seen the highest profit growth. But instead, the largest profit change continues to be in golf and wellness resorts. And even beach resorts is stable after last year record performance. About these record performances, it is very important to have in mind that not continuing to see record-breaking figures doesn't really mean we are not doing well, right? Even if we are able to stay at today's level, it would be significantly better than in 2019 and before, right? So Europe had an amazing summer, and so really good profit increase, even higher than revenue increase. If we look at Southern Europe as an example, total revenue per available room has increased 27% since January 2020. And if we look at GOP per available room, this increase has been 38% versus January 2020, as we will see in the next slide. So these are the trends, as we saw earlier, total revenue per available room. These are the trends for GOP per available room, overall increase in profitability, but at a slower pace over the last 12 months, hinting that we have probably reached the end of recovery, right? The gap between Southern Europe and the rest of Europe continues to grow. In Western Europe, we see a pickup, and this is mainly from countries like Germany and Austria, coming from a lower base, and of course France, which had an amazing summer due to the Olympics. I'll show you some more details here in next slide. So looking now at some main markets in Europe, okay? We see on the left side those markets that have seen a decline, Ireland, Netherlands, coming from a high base last year. And on the right side, those markets that are coming from a lower base, like Germany, Belgium, Austria. So nothing really to focus here. France, great summer in great recent months, but overall we can see, like the rest of the markets, that the profit growth is larger than revenue growth. And again, this is mainly because of costs have slowed, and we are still seeing some revenue growth. Italy has already repositioned itself as a market, and growth is growth, right? Even if it maintains or grows a little bit, investors should be happy. Focusing now on Italy, the next few slides are about Italy. I just wanted to highlight a specific market as an example, and I chose Italy. Looking at 12 months moving average since January 2020, things start to look stable. It is very difficult to predict what direction revenue and profit will go, since there are also many factors involved. But for sure, you can see we have gone from steep growth to stable. Now we see both revenue and profit starting to decrease, but I think this will flatten out, which is probably a good news, a good thing for investors to see the Italian market with stable numbers after being so volatile. This summer was very strong, and as I already mentioned, I have here a few markets: Italy, Spain, Portugal, and overall Southern Europe to kind of prove it. Italian numbers are up by 4.2% from a total revenue perspective, 4.5% up from a GOP perspective. Portugal's strong growth as well. Spain didn't get to enjoy the same level of growth. And overall, Southern Europe, still also good growth in average of these markets. And again, after the amazing summer we had last year, we cannot expect like this 15% growth every year, right? So if we can maintain last year's numbers and add a little bit of growth, we should be all happy. Now focusing on profit margin, and because of the huge amount of luxury hotels in Italy, I would like to break it down between full service and luxury, so we can see that they are two different worlds, with luxury actually outperforming last year. Italy, I think Italy is the country, the European country with more markets where they can charge ADR over 1,000 euros. I think they have 11 markets in Italy with this ADR above 1,000 euro, which is very impressive. So this is a reason I wanted to break down full service versus luxury, because although it says Italy on the left side in the graph, it's actually full service and then luxury on the right side, right? Yeah, this just highlights the luxury segment is the highest performing in Italy. Looking at the Italian market now in more details, I'm focusing only on full service. The main point is to highlight here is a drop of 2 percentage points in the GOP margin. Some of this linked to the drop of 1 percentage point in F&B margin. But the GOP margin overall, as you can see in the graph, in 2019, 2022, 23, 24, it keeps growing, reaching its peak in 2023. And even now with this drop, hotels in Italy are making 6 percentage points more than in 2019. So we need to remember this when looking at this year's numbers. So as revenue growth slows down, like we saw, especially in the US and Northern Europe, costs don't slow. As we were talking earlier, especially labor costs, right? And this is a key challenge. We are competing with other industries, and whether it is government mandated or the industry norm, we are definitely paying our staff more to support the increasing cost of living, right? The main areas affecting are back of house, as you can see in this second line here in the slide, admin, sales and marketing, maintenance. I think because we cut costs here during COVID and left smaller teams, because we had to deal with bigger challenges, with bigger problems in rooms and F&B. And now these teams are growing, especially like sales and marketing, as we continue with our efforts to drive revenue growth, right? But overall, labor is 3.6% up, which is not bad. And now with revenue slowing down, as long as we can keep labor costs under control, we should be able to protect margins, which, as mentioned earlier, they are just 2 percentage points versus last year, but 6 percentage points above 2019. Another thing is that is going to affect the GOP is expenses, right? Here we have like costs per room 9% up, booking costs 6% up, room supplies 13% up. The area where we have seen a significant decline is utility cost. Italy has a very high energy cost versus Europe, and although it has decreased by 9%, it's still at much higher levels than other countries, as you can see in the graph on the right hand side of the slide. And of course, the increase you see in the last few months is because of summer, right? Which is the peak time of the year for energy consumption in Italy and Southern Europe in general. So that's where the main difference is versus Europe in light blue. And this is my last slide. This is quite a hot topic of discussion in the US. Insurance costs per available room, and it is quite obvious why it's a hot topic there, right? The US has seen an increase of 74% since 2019, and Europe is at plus 46%. So this is a cost we are not really talking much about here, but definitely increasing really significantly. Okay, so that would be for me. Thank you very much, and yeah, looking forward to your questions at the end of the session if you have some. Over to you, Cristina.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. really impressive figures and reassuring in many different respects. So hopefully you can still hear me or you can still see me okay as I, whoopsie daisy, as I share my screen again over there. It's loading. Okay, so we'll move on with those a couple of pointers that you gave us, and it was one very specific one that I tied on to if we're able to keep the labor costs under control, we should be able to protect the margin. I wrote that down, and it's incredibly important. How do we keep control over that specific item in our P&L, which represents more than 50%? But we'll get to that point shortly. What I would like to do is to go now into a couple of key areas about profitability, and we've seen some of the revenue drivers there and how the regional performance looks like, and also how critical is this ability to control those costs. So I think we've spoken to Liselott, we've spoken to Alonso about quite a few of these areas that help us convert revenue to profit, and one of them was obviously cost controlling. So that is understanding the actual cost behavior is fundamental there to help us achieve that highest conversion. But it's important the effort that we have to do there, which means effectively for revenue management and cost management to work together. Since the cost management piece, we will see, is impacted by so many more players than the revenue piece, which obviously is steered by our revenue teams very diligently. The other key area was the leading indicators, and we've heard about some of the key leading indicators from Alonso from a revenue standpoint. So how important is us being able to understand those demand sources compared to the same time last year, compared to budget, how we're doing pick up by segment, by lead time, etc. But also we heard from Liselott from a profit management perspective, the importance of being able to monitor the productivity piece and how it enables us to get to those, reach those daily targets. So the understanding how the demand effectively unfolds on a daily basis helps us determine the actual resources that we need to allocate on a daily basis. And that means going beyond just what is the top line revenue and actually drilling into the correlation between how we forecast that revenue and how we allocate that cost, not just month end, what happens over a month, but actually on a daily basis. And that's really where that alignment between revenue and cost management becomes fundamental, because it helps us sort of move from, okay, how am I doing from a performance standpoint, retrospectively, those lagging indicators, and starting to talk about those leading indicators. Obviously, technology becomes fundamental. We've heard how important it is to be able to connect into those source systems, so it gives us the data. It's validated. The data is connected, is overlaid, and that empowers us to get those decisions at the head of department level and the GM level. And just similarly as we're doing stuff with revenue management systems that have now become pretty much the day-to-day and the norm to support revenue teams. Similarly, we need that level of technology that enables us at head of department level, so that daily we're able to understand what is it that I need to do as a department head, what are the recommendations, and not only that, I need to understand what is my reaction to that recommendation, so it captures that information and it helps us determine is my HOD responding correctly, which could actually help us determine the score of the property based on all those recommendations that we're making. And finally, what we care about is being able to focus on the bottom line and have that shift driven from an industry perspective from the top line to the bottom line, which will financially sustain us long term. But ultimately, what is that key to driving the profitability? So I have this actually from one of the one of the chains that has made this statement, actually was Redison, if I remember correctly. They said what helps us drive profitability is the ability to determine in advance the optimal organization requirements that we need on a daily basis. And that is I picked up on that statement because it effectively is what helps us control and manage the things that we do on a daily basis. And that helps us also identify what are some of the methodologies that we could actually use to do this. And it revolves around this change in the conventional way of how we use forecasts today to plan the resources, and how we connect those forecasts into the actual operation. And the methodology that has been incredibly successful in achieving this at a global scale is what we call adaptive resource management, which what it does effectively, it helps you adapt those resources consistently in real time to the changes that we actually see in the daily demand and the hotel activity. And obviously, what feeds this adaptive resource management is the forecast. So we need a very accurate, very reliable forecasting daily that is able to predict the business volumes that we're anticipating in each hotel, and not just for rooms, but actually every single profit center. So everything becomes connected, and that enables us to track those productivity metrics to ensure that we are allocating our resources and we're allocating those costs effectively on a daily basis, so that HODs are able to do their jobs as effectively as possible. And that means we are tackling effectively the major cost centers, which we talked about. We talked about labor costs, we talked about utilities. There's one other, or rather a couple, because they're connected. There is food cost, and its sort of brother, which is food waste, that we'll see is such a big issue. So it's how long term can we ensure that we could drive this exercise is gamifying the hotel operations in such way that it engages the teams in the right practices. And we talk about sustainability, financial sustainability, the governance piece and sustainability is hugely important. And this is one of the places that it starts, is how we control our costs. And then, of course, we move into the social, how we deal with our teams and how we manage their expectations, and how we impact into the environment, because the resources that we ultimately use, they should be used properly, and because they're scarce. So that environmental piece as well is included. And so that is a bit of a sort of like preview to what we're going to talk about, particularly as we delve into these major cost items with this methodology that we call adaptive resource management. And these costs, this major costs that we see there on the screen, they represent normally pretty much, most cases, more than 80% of our P&L. So if we tackle these correctly, that really helps us achieve, let's say, the results that we're looking for. Food waste is a very important one, and being able to measure on a daily basis how much food waste we're generating across the food journey, from the purchasing all the way to the customer plate, helps us understand where it's actually generated and identify what plan do we need to implement, what particular actions, what objectives can we quantify it with, and KPIs to reduce it. And then, of course, if we manage food waste, we can also manage food costs. There's more actions we need to take on food costs beyond food waste, but it means monitoring and aligning that food cost daily to the revenue forecast in the F&B outlets. So that means we're controlling our inventory effectively. We're making sure that our stock turnover is, again, effective, and that we have the right procurement strategies. And we're looking into our menu engineering as well. We're going to talk about labor cost. Again, it's a big player, more than 50% of our P&Ls. It means labor across every single one of the departments. So if we talk about front office, housekeeping, the food and beverage, M&E, so on and so forth, is making sure that the staffing that we have there is aligned fully with the business demand and with our productivity targets. And then the utilities piece is effectively tracking, like Alonso was saying, tracking that consumption, managing that consumption on a daily basis across all those items: energy, water, natural gas, chemicals, towels and linen waste, and so on and so forth, and figuring out what are the practices that we need to put in place to reduce also that environmental impact. And if we take them one by one, very briefly, if we tackle food waste to start with, it's really it's really dramatic. Let's say that a third of all the food that we produce globally goes to waste. And 70% of it is actually fit for human consumption, and that's data from FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. That is a big problem that we have in our operations, and that we must deal with urgently, because not just for the financial benefit of it, but actually it's the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. So if it were a country, according to the UN, it would be the third largest country behind US and China. That's 3 times what the airline industry is generating. But does everybody know about it? Quite a few people that we speak to, they don't. Barely about 5% of professionals globally, they monitor food waste. So that's a big challenge, and that's kind of where we need to start tackling, and not just for the financial piece, but also the regulations that we're starting to get more and more pressure on. The Paris Agreement, the Agenda 2030, which is really focusing on reducing that by 50%. Why is actually food waste really happening? Or rather, what prevents hotels from addressing food waste is very often this knowledge gap. They think normally, well, it's the buffet that's the responsible piece for my food waste. And most operations, especially the larger operations, we actually observe that's just about 10 to 50% of it. And that the majority of it actually happens from the purchase through to reception, distribution, storage, preparation. It's really where the big chunk is concentrated. And then, of course, the customer plate, that we have another piece that we need to manage. So the clear connection between the actual food waste and food cost is if we reduce our food waste, it helps us effectively minimize the amount of edible food that goes uneaten, and this could lower our food cost by about 50 to 20% on average. And we need very specific KPIs to be able to deal with this. One of them is food waste per cover in grams. That really tells us what goes on across every single piece of part of our operation daily. Then, of course, improving our inventory management and making sure that we're tracking inventory effectively, we're using our FIFO policies right, we're preventing over purchasing and perishable items, to be make sure that they're used before expiration and so on. But also recycling. We can donate a lot of the unused foods to food banks and shelters, and also, we could even transform them into byproducts, whether it's compost, whether it's energy, electricity, and so on. This is I wanted to put a clear example of what's the connection between food waste and food cost. This is a project we've done, and with one of the larger organizations in Spain. They call it Magic Costa Blanca, and in their case, they took control over the food waste. They started fighting against food waste, and sort of like early April of last year, and they put on the first hotel. It was a fairly large operation, 453 bedrooms, and so the covers we're talking about between 2,500 to sort of like the low season to 4,000 to 4,500 even covers in the high season. And their journey sort of started that baseline that we've determined initially. We were talking about a daily waste of about 352 kilograms per day. And in less than 4 months, by obviously tackling food waste and monitoring, we've seen that go down by 42%. But the financial incentive over the duration of this duration, which sort of started in April, and we're monitoring this all the way through to September time, they saved in one single hotel 273,000 euros. So that gives us a sense of the connection between how managing food waste really impacts our P&L. The areas that we can obviously focus on is reduction and prevention, identifying, that we want to do this. We give organizational commitment into fighting food waste, and we ensure that we have the right approach. We enable our teams, and we put the right control systems in place, the technology to help us monitor, and then we look at what happens before preparation, what happens at the mise en place, the portioning, the buffet, and then we actually have a conversation with our customers, because very often lots of organizations actually measure and report on food waste, but forget to involve the customer. And that's really where we could really nudge the customer to reduce their food waste as well. And then the final piece is where we actually talk about what happens with the waste that we have left. How can we transform that? Or if it's surplus food that can actually be donated, make sure we take those actions in place. We've been working with this program that's been awarded by the UN. It's called the Pledge on Food Waste, and it's been developed over the past 10 years, and it's a very interesting, very scalable program that allows organizations to start taking control over their food waste. And if we move to from sort of food cost and food waste to sort of the labor side, we've already anticipated some of those challenges, and the high turnover rates and the seasonality of the staff, how they fluctuate, especially the nature of the business that we run, and the diversity of the skills, the languages and the cultural differences that we have to manage. And of course, the regulations. Alonso made a very good point on that, how important it is that we actually align. And possibly Norway is one of the toughest countries that we've been dealing with, and where 6 weeks in advance, you can't really change people's rota without everyone's consent. So it's really fundamental to be able to know and manage around these labor regulations. And of course, the training piece, which is also fundamental. But ultimately, is where do we need to focus is on the things that we actually can control. And the bits that we can control is that daily activity that we have running in our hotel. And this means increasing our productivity by using planning that is based on activity drivers like occupancy, like revenue, like covers, which ultimately will help us manage these major items, the labor, the food costs, the utilities, and so on. This infographic actually tells us how complex our hotel operation is and how it's got this interconnected system of connectors and process flows. Now imagine those are disconnected. They don't really see what each other is doing. That's when that substantial waste is happening. That substantial resource waste is actually happening, and it can also compromise, of course, the service quality that we deliver. So once we open up the flow of the relevant information across all these departments, we start seeing that we actually only use the resources that we actually need. And that allows us to ultimately ensure that we understand daily what that top line is, the occupancy, that number of guests, what they spend, and so on, and make sure that we've got those resources in place. How can we illustrate this? So this is an example of what happens in each department. We call them cockpits. So this is where we see the head of each department effectively, and we calculate their effectiveness in real time. And this is what we talk about profitability and profit management, is when we look at not only the recommendations that we're driving, but actually we're capturing their reaction. So cockpit in an airline industry, it means that you get the data coming to you, but then the system also captures your reaction to what you're reading on the screen. And similarly, we're doing it and to be able to manage these resources on a daily basis. And then ultimately, we talk about how do we increase profitability, how do we increase that GOP, but what we need to increase first is the GM's operating performance and its capacity. And if we're able to do that, then obviously the byproduct of that is that GOP increase. But the fundamental piece becomes the forecasting. It becomes the engine that ultimately helps us understand that daily business demand and how it develops, and what is the planning that we need to do at operational level. So based on the forecast, it helps us set that goals, those goals, and what are those productivity targets that we need to have in view, how we can manage those major cost items, that labor, that food cost, that utilities, and make sure we've got the right resources in place. And this is an example of how we can overlay our forecast on a daily basis, and I talk about the next 500 days, and with our current schedule, how we are scheduling people, how we are scheduling those resources. Now we talk about labor, and how well are they aligned. We can see our budgets, we can see our what's going on, also from a granular level, room nights, guest nights, departures, etc. And we're able to easily identify those outliers very quickly to address them. What do we need is to keep to our productivity target. And productivity target effectively means, if we take an example of housekeeping, so the cost driver, forecasting the cost driver for housekeeping means how many room nights ultimately going to be having, and that tells us how many labor hours we would need. So if we have 1,000 room nights as a cost driver, that requires 500 labor hours. That means the productivity target is 2 rooms to be cleaned per hour. So in restaurants, it could be the cost driver could be F&B revenue. Maybe we have a target of delivering 40 euros an hour, or in breakfast, the cost driver would be the number of guests from the previous day, what we call covers, and how many covers are we able to serve per work hour, so on and so forth. So productivity management becomes a very powerful tool in being able to manage the service quality and deliver that total revenue on a daily basis. But the opportunity we highlight again is in the daily view, and that rather than the monthly view, because 2 understaffed days followed by 2 overstaffed days don't actually make optimal staffing. And so I use this analogy that I remember Young, the CEO of D2O, used to talk about, and said, what about if I, have my feet in an oven and my head in the freezer and my average body temperature is 37 degrees? I have an optimal temperature, but it doesn't mean I'm in optimal state. Right? So very similarly is what happens into our operation. If we only look at things, what happens at the end of the month, that we're really missing out on the opportunity to manage the daily view and manage that on a daily view. So this is this methodology really enables to see our GOP developing in real time, daily, and how close are we actually to the end of month target. And I'm really happy to have Liselott with me, really, because she can then tell us how she gets this done. But it's a very good illustration of how we can sort of talk about labor management in this case. So if we look at this little graph that we have there on the right-hand side, we see that dotted line. We see what happens before the dotted line. It's a very good example of, record-breaking increases in revenue and how those can be easily offset by costs not taken into account. And then we can see what happens after the dotted line when the actually control of the management of resources is taken. This means that we're able to achieve these sort of results. In the case of Pandox, I think it was the 8 properties that initially started with this. In a matter of 12 months, they saved about 3.4 million, which is a very important number. But there's very specific KPIs that help us monitor the performance of our assets on a daily basis. And there's one that not much of the industry knows, which is revenue per operating labor unit, or revenue per hour. That is the total revenue divided by the paid hours that we actually end up working. And that gives us a really good indication. We can see that REVPAR, the blue line, how it increases, and the labor hours, which is the orange line, decreasing. And that's what we mean aligning revenue with productivity, and ensuring that is enhancing that productivity. The savings that we're seeing here, it means 1.9 million hours of saving. And that's just purely due to planning. Nobody got fired in this exercise. So similar to that, we've got other examples, very good examples. And the final bit is the utilities. How do we really keep track of those utilities? Because, as we heard Alonso say, it's a massive cost center. So that energy, that water, that chemicals, towels, linen, food waste, and waste in general is a major part of the environmental performance, and it's important to act upon it. But also it's a very important aspect when we talk about the current value of our asset and the future value of our asset, because if we're not tackling the environmental aspect, we might be at risk of our asset being stranded or becoming a brown asset, right? So what is the key, again, to managing utilities? Same principle. We align resources to the daily activity and occupancy in the hotel. And that helps us on the financial side, but it also helps us on the CSRD side, where we got more and more pressure from regulatory bodies to be able to be sustainable and compliant to all these, Paris agreements and net zero standards and so on and so forth. That means both from a monitoring standpoint is breaking down what happens at chain level and what are our goals, and distributing it based on various criteria on a daily basis that need to be managed by the team. And this is a good example illustrated how close we are daily today compared to our 2030 target. And then we also can use ideas and best practice banks that can be shared across all properties to make sure that they're doing the right thing. At the end of the day, we need to have that integration to comply with the European taxonomy between the environmental planning and the financial planning. And if we need to drill deeper into producing our sustainability reports, we know about composition of the CO2 emissions. We can see where the peak consumption hours, so on and so forth, and we can benchmark. And from here, I will hand over in a moment to Liselott, because I'd love her to talk about all these things. We've presented one on labor. We're talking now about resource management. We're through, this integrating of sustainability into the daily operations. We could actually see, the Pandox achieving an improvement in their environmental targets by 25%, and that didn't require capex. We're talking about behavioral changes that we can drive with our team. So what we really want to get to is this ability to benchmark sustainability across the industry, across the three scopes. Where our hotel is positioned today, what is the industry average, and what is the best in class, and how are we doing? So thank you for your time. Obviously, this is all based on technology. Technology has been developed for the past 2 decades, and it's obviously fundamental. But I would like to now hand over to Liselott, so she could really tell us about how she gets things done on a daily basis. So thank you for your time. Liselott, all yours.
Yes, so I will share my screen if that's okay with you.
Perfect, let's do that.
Yes, great.
Let you navigate and control it as best as possible.
So let's see if I can just start up the... You can see my screen okay, I hope?
We can.
Great. So I want to thank you for the invite to be able to share with you how we do this in Pandox. And as Cristina mentioned, we are a very active hotel property owner. We try to stay very close to hotel operations with our own or managed operating properties. And out of our 157 properties, 18 of these in own operations run on this performance management software suite that we have been seeing a little bit, Cristina showing us, called PMI, presented by D2O. And this enables us since 2014, so 10 years now, a very online, real-time and transparent systematic approach for our hotel operations. And this is when it comes to especially activity predictions, resource and cost planning and its alignment, the forecast and budget work. So I'm really happy to share with you these key elements of our approach and the benefits that we see. So I won't go too deep, but I want to give you a little bit on, the hands-on things that we do every day that enables us to steer in the direction that we choose. Let me just activate this laser pointer. So with this tool, we have gathered the great platform for all the relevant data for our daily operations and finance team, as we talked about this integration of all the source systems. So we have an next to complete picture in one place that is real time and very transparent to the organization. The hotel team members all have the current data and the valid data that they need to carry out their daily work in a very knowledgeable way without having to wait around for any reports to be put together, but they can take part of actual figures and plans both via the web on their computers, but as we have very active teams, on the floor, there's also a smartphone app available that they use on a daily basis to get hold of the data that they need. One of the key functionalities that I see in PMI that really helps us is this dynamic live forecasting. And we have touched on this already, but we predict the revenue and activity levels, such as guest nights and covers and what have you, for all our profit centers on a daily level with the help of this tool. Crunching up to, as I mentioned earlier, 5 years of data, of actual data, but then also using on the books figures, for example, to provide daily suggestions for the team. We can alter them, but it is a collaboration where we see the system should provide us with, it's the golden 80-20 rule, right? That it should provide us with 80% of the data and the accuracy, and maybe there could be some human intervention some of the days where we see we know things that the system cannot pick up. But having it and giving the foundation from the tool, it's very time efficient to try and foresee the activity level, so we can spend time elsewhere amongst the guests and maybe also with our team members if they need us. To promote the performance development and stay in control of our labor cost, each department has these monthly operations targets to work with each month. So where the HOD is also encouraged to participate setting these. So what Cristina had as an example, these cleaned rooms per worked hour, we see that the housekeeper manager should be involved in setting these targets, because we see also that they can differ from month to month if he or she has new people starting, if it's a heavy month where you have maybe heavy leisure families using the rooms in a different way than maybe a pure business month where the business people only go in and out of the rooms, hardly ever sleep anyway, and then just leave again. So it's much easier to clean and being much more able to have a higher productivity on these months. But we see that having them engaged into this target setting, we also have a handshake from them, from all the HODs, and they can own their target. We can also hold them more accountable, and they understand where they come from. So we see a much higher result achievement by doing it this way. And with the dynamic live forecasting that we have and the departmental target setting that we do, the resource planning that Cristina also showed in these different graphs, we get suggestions from PMI on how to best reach the monthly goal by aligning every day our schedules. So the HOD can fairly easily see if they're doing a good job or not. We have integrations with our TKS systems, or it can also be done in the system if we want to do scheduling there. But they can see how to optimize, put the hours where they are best needed to reach the monthly goal. As we have also the P&L module in play on this platform, we also use the revenue predictions that I mentioned earlier alongside automated calculations for cost and expenses, creating a really optimized forecast and budget work environment. And it saves a tremendous amount of time, with this being also 12-month rolling forecasting manner for giving this longer perspective. And for our conversion focus, that is a very hot topic with us. We can see, and it enables us to monitor and stay on pace. But just to mention Juan's presentation, we actually also use Hotstats for the P&L benchmarking. So that also helps us a lot in our discussions on what the healthy level should be at. So it's really a good product, Juan, I must say. In Pandox, as they have assigned its own performance manager, i.e. me, we ensure a higher level of knowledge around the performance tool to maximize its benefits. I see, in addition to the performance analysis that I make, I do follow up, the coaching for this long-term value and result creation. I also train most of the new HODs coming into the organization to quickly get them on board on our approach and get this into their work DNA. So me having, without revealing my age, but I have many years of hotel experience in addition to this technology knowledge. I think we have a very fruitful collaboration with high impact, as I understand both the operations view, but we also I also see the result we need to create together, and that the tool can enable us to see where we have the gaps and where we have the potential. So it is a great tool, and it is very rewarding to also build HODs in their own management development. The latest addition to our modules, in addition to the revenue, performance, and the P&L module work we have since April 2023 also a systematic approach to our green cost or consumption items. And these are linked to our science-based climate targets approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. As an example, by 2030, Pandox will reduce greenhouse gas emissions in own operations, so scope 1 and 2, by 42%. But being beneficial for the planet and the Paris Agreement, it also, of course, means that we keep a much closer eye to the cost and expense side of things. In everyday practice, this means that we have also for these different categories monthly targets, and they are communicated, connected to the original science-based targets. And we have our teams knowing about this so they can follow the month-to-date pacing of consumption on these different categories to take actions if they see that they are sliding off the chart, or if they have new actions to really engage into this and improve the consumption. There's also a social community platform that we have for knowledge sharing. So all the good ideas and examples we can share with our peers. And we see that, of course, this with what we call the green resource management, it has great potential to further manage for enhanced profits, but also for the planet and the people, of course. The categories that we work with, as you see, I've lined up here. So energy, water, waste, food waste, towels and linen, and chemicals. And as this module is available for all the HODs, I think, Cristina, you showed a similar little screenshot of how it's displayed. We can see that all HODs can engage and take part of this environmental work, and see that, you know, what I do every day in my department actually makes a difference. So it is visualizing and really giving the information and being transparent on any progress. I thought it could be a little bit interesting to see also the changes that has been between 2022 and 2023, where we actually started this work. So we have reduced the energy consumption, the kilowatt hours per square meters, with 11%, and per guest night 18%. For water, the liter per guest night has gone down with 21%. So it's a lot of cost reduction, but again, also good for the planet. But I must mention, I know, Cristina, you said that this was only change in behavioral, but we also have in Pandox a quite extensive green investment program that we've also run parallel with this. So I think it again is a collaboration between the green investments and the change in behavioral that we see. So the green investment can be LED implementations. We have low energy kitchen appliances that we have installed, motion censored lights in the corridors, heat pump change, solar panels, just as an example. So I think there might be a need with some investments to also get this really change. Just to summarize a little bit, our benefits by using this systematic approach, as I see it, and this tool, I see we can create a much higher operational excellence where we can set goals very clearly and also communicate them in an easy way. So the HOD can take part of this, also communicate with their team and see that we really develop these numbers over time. Our operations stay in good control. We have less surprises because we work with our revenues and activity levels very dynamically. And with this comes then the ability to be really agile and have a higher result creation. As we work with the activities, of course, we can adjust and align our cost and expense items, again, be less static and more in control. It's exciting with this new addition with the Go Green management approach that we reduce the cost, the CO2 footprint, and have a really behavioral change. Perhaps not only at work, but hopefully the team members can bring this home and maybe use some of the ideas domestically as well. But to just finalize this, as I see it, my take on using a tool like this and having this possibility, it really enables the full organization to be aware of our numbers. And we encourage them to be active and taking actions to improve. And we, they are being held accountable since we have the handshake in the different target setting routines to ensure a more successful outcome. And the result creation is not only the work of, head office or the GM, but as I mentioned, the full team. And this is a very engaging process as I see it. And it is very rewarding for me, but also for the team members and HODs and the GMs that actually, in the end of the day, have an easier job and can focus on maybe other things. So with this, I thank you very much for the attention and hand over back to Cristina.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for that incredible visibility, Liselott. I'm really set on this engagement piece that you talked about and how important it is to be able to communicate that across the organization. Congratulations for what you do is pretty incredible. And thank you so much for sharing all those insights, Liselott. I'm conscious you need to go because you've got another event starting literally now.
Yes.
So we will miss you for the Q&A session, but I will make sure that this is recorded so people will have your contact details. And if they wish to get more insights, then I'm sure they'll get in touch. But thank you, Liselott, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
It was incredible.
Thank you. Take care.
See you
Bye-bye.
soon. Take care. Bye. Excellent. Well, if you'd allow me, Anna, I think it's best for you to just go ahead and share your screen because next we have a really insightful session from Anna from Shiji. I think many people know Shiji from the various different perspectives. Many of them know them from their Review Pro product, which I think it's sort of like sitting in pretty much organizations across the globe, or most of them. But today we're actually going to talk about the bigger perspective and the enterprise platform, and what is that power of the single guest profile to help us maximize revenue. So thank you, Anna, for joining us. Really, really looking forward to your insights, and over to you.
Thank you, Cristina, for inviting us, and thank you for inviting us to participate definitely in this fantastic forum. A lot of ideas has been shared, so some of them I will touch in the presentation that you will see. I just want to apologize for my voice today. I'm fighting with a bit of a cold, so if I sound like a croaky frog, just know it's not my usual speaking style at all. Yeah. So I recently had a conversation with a hotel owner who was feeling quite frustrated. He understood that guests crave more and more personalized experiences, but his systems were just, clunky. He was missing out on opportunities to upsell, foster loyalty, and ultimately boost revenue. So let's think about the typical guest journey. They book online, maybe they call for inquiries, and then interact with different staff members during their stay. What happens to all the data? Often, it's divided across various systems. You've got your booking engines, you've got the PMS, the CRM, your spa software. It's quite chaotic. And that's a challenge nowadays, technology. So nevertheless, what I share with him and what I like to share with all of you today is that there is a way to create truly unforgettable guest experiences while significantly boosting your bottom line. And this is precisely what we've seen, that running a hotel is a marathon, is not a sprint. And as you were saying, and you touch on all of them, this is the reality of our industry: labor shortages and rising wages, rising operation costs, competition is fierce, guests are really price sensitive more and more. There is constant pressure to keep up on technology. And we just also address sustainability concerns. So these challenges make it really tough to deliver exceptional experiences while maintaining profitability. But it gets even more complicated. Think about this: 61% of guests are willing to spend more for personalized experiences. Now imagine you're celebrating a special occasion, you've spent your time and money to stay at a hotel, expecting something extra to make your stay memorable. Maybe you even told the hotel about your celebration in advance, but when you get there, there is nothing. It feels like they didn't even notice. This is where so many hotels fall short. They are missing that personal touch that guests are willing to pay for. And this is where personalization really starts to matter. We all know that creating a great experience goes beyond just offering a nice room. It's about making guests feel special and remembered. In fact, 78% of travelers want personalized experiences based on their past interactions, like remembering a guest preference for a high floor on their favorite pillow type. But it doesn't stop here. 84% of guests also prioritize hotels that protect their data, which means if hotels aren't meeting these expectations, they're putting their business at risk. This is, I believe, a wake-up call for our industry. If you want to stay competitive, we need to embrace new technologies that allow us to deliver this level of personalization while ensuring data security. And that's how we not only meet guest expectations, but exceed them. And that's the reason why at Shiji, we are not just building software, we are building relationships, right? So we've seen firsthand the frustration of outdated systems, and we are dedicated to creating solutions that empower hoteliers to provide truly exceptional service. Our approach, I think it's clear now, is guest-centric, and our focus is on delivering a user experience that is as intuitive as it's powerful. And our goal is definitely simple: help hotels create unforgettable stays and boost profitability, of course. So imagine a hotel running smoothly, where every team member has access to all the information they need instantly. Cristina, you were mentioning about how important it is to be interconnected. So that's what the Shiji Enterprise platform makes it possible. It's like having a digital conductor leading an orchestra of systems. Our Shiji Enterprise platform really, it's a flawless integration of all different platforms. It creates efficient workflows and ensuring data security. It's cloud-based, so it escalates easily as your business grows. But the real star is the single guest profile, the secret weapon for creating those personalized experiences guests raved about. So the single guest profile isn't just about collecting data. It's about understanding your guests. The single guest profile provides definitely a holistic view of each guest, their preferences, their past stays, their spend, their communication style, everything you need to anticipate their needs and exceed their expectations. Think about last time you guys stayed at a hotel that really, got you. They remember your name. Most probably, they remember the drink that you like when you arrive at the reception. They remember your preferences. They made you felt special. And that's the power of our single guest profile. Global guest profiles mean consistent service across all your properties. Intelligent merging cleans up your data and prevents errors. Universal search gives your staff the information they need instantly. Enhanced personalization allows you to tailor offers and create memorable experiences. And profile analysis provides crucial insights to inform your business decisions. Duplicate guest profiles is a major headache for our clients. We have so many clients that are coming to us with this headache. So losing loyalty points and personalized marketing opportunities, it's really tough to see. That's why this is one of our major focuses, our intelligent merging. It cleans data, you get happy staff and increased revenue, and it's simple as it is. And remember that time, or maybe your staff were looking for, some specific information about the guests across the systems that were not kindly, finding it. They were losing a lot of time, and it's stressful, time consuming. With our universal search, really staff can access to every detail quickly and very efficiently. Allergies, alerts, single room meetings, white type of floor, room service, etc. So for us, data isn't just numbers, it's a story. Our profile analysis helps you identify patterns and trends in your guest data, giving you a lot of insight into your most valuable customers and what drives their choices. In the screen, we can see Frank, so our amazing Mr. Frank Sinatra, that stayed in this property 12 times with, with the total gross revenue spent, number of nights, average length. So it gives you a lot of information about the guest. So with this data, you can create targeted offers that appeal to your guests, leading to definitely increased revenue. So understanding customers' purchase history and preferences, you can spot opportunities for cross-selling related to products or upselling premium services. And this focus approach definitely, we believe, that boosts both revenue and customer satisfaction. A client of us was telling us that he experienced a 20% increase in spa bookings after using our personalized recommendations. Now, if we think about the guest journey from the moment you book a hotel and the moment that you check out, wouldn't it be amazing if every interaction was smooth, personalized, and memorable? That's what Shiji helps create. Our system flawlessly integrates guest feedback from our Shiji Review Pro platform, allowing hotels to address issues quickly and personalize future interactions. And this proactive approach really builds loyalty, because in the end, you are understanding what was wrong, what can be better. For example, if you notice that the guest left a negative comment about noise levels during their last stay, you can proactively, offer them a quiet room on the next stay with you. So the goal is to build lasting relationship with your guests through a truly unified and seamless experience. To summarize, the hospitality industry is changing. Guests today definitely want more than just a place to stay. They are looking for meaningful experiences. With a 360-degree customer profile isn't just a feature, it's a transformation. And we truly believe that, by improving guest experience leads to a better reputation, giving you more pricing power, which ultimately results in increased revenue and profit. And additionally, leveraging upsell and cross-selling capabilities can boost loyalty, creating a cycle where, you know, happy guests with return and contribute in the end to your success. Before I wrap up, and I wanted to go, you know, because we are over time, so I'm very conscious of time. Let's take a moment to look at these 3 examples of how guest-focused approach is driving success. First, Ruby Hotels in Europe, they run 18 properties with nearly 3,000 rooms. What they realized is that to really connect with their guests and understand what they want, they needed to break down silos and get their data flowing. By doing this, they are able to deliver definitely more personalized experience, which helps them capture more revenue. Next, Dakota Hotels in the UK, they have 5 properties. And what's really cool about them is their obsession with knowing everything about their guests, whether it's someone visiting for the first time or their 100th time. Technology helps them make this happen, which not only makes their job easier, but also makes their guests feel more at home. And then there's Circle Collection with 14 properties in Europe. They took a more technical approach, choosing Shiji's cloud solution to ensure scalability and security. This really gives them the foundation to keep growing while keeping operations running smoothly. So I would say the takeaway here is that when you really focus on the guests, by understanding their needs and using the right technology to deliver, you're not just improving the guest experience, you're boosting your revenue and creating a long-term loyalty. That was quite fast. Thank you, Cristina. Thank you all.
Wow, that is pretty impressive where technology's got to today, right? Really helping us navigate all of those various complexities to bring to that single view of the guest. I guess priorities are very different. We're talking here about profit management and ultimately growing toll revenue for gas, and this level of personalization helps us achieve that. It becomes fundamental from a top line perspective and an operational efficiency. So really, really glad that we had you on, and I'm sure lots of people will find opportunity to watch the recording. We had quite a few people registered for this event, but due to operational demands, I'm sure that not everyone was able to connect. So we're really happy to have been able to record this and share with everyone else internationally. So thank you all very, very much. It was really insightful for me to pick your brains, to hear your insights, and I really hope that we'll meet again very soon, and we'll do more of these events together. So thank you all very much. I will allow you to say goodbye to everyone. And everyone watching us, I haven't seen many questions coming up into the Q&A session, so I figured we'll probably skip that. Unless anybody would like to come forward and ask a question, I think we'll keep those to the private chats that we will have following the event. Okay, that's where we are. So thank you very much, Juan, Alonso, Anna.
Thank you, Cristina. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you
Bye,
very soon.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks for everything. Cheers. Bye. Bye.